Some people spend their whole lives trying to be seen. Others change everything without saying a word. This is the story of a quiet janitor. An old man most people walk past without a glance. No title, no voice in meetings, no fancy suit. But one day, someone tries to push him too far. And what happens next? No one in that company will ever forget. Speech balloon, leave a comment if you've ever met someone humble who deserved way more. Thumbs up like this video if you believe respect is earned, not bought. Bell subscribe for more real stories of karma, justice, and the power of the unseen. Silicon Valley, Tuesday, 5:02 a.m. The sun hadn't cracked the sky yet. Streetlights still glowed against the fog. Cafes weren't open. Offices were dark. Most people were still asleep, tucked away in expensive condos or luxury lofts. But in a corporate tower off El Camino Real, a soft buzzing sound echoed through the marble halls. A floor buffer, pushed by a man moving slow, steady, like he wasn't in a rush to beat the world, just to keep it clean. That man was Raymond Carter. Everyone called him Ray. Ray was 72, tall, thin, slow-moving. He wore a gray maintenance uniform with a faded patch that just said, Carter. His boots were clean, even if they were old. His hands were worn, but careful, the kind of hands that made coffee the slow way, folded laundry with crisp corners, and always held the elevator door open for someone else. He didn't talk much. Didn't need to. He was the kind of man who showed up early, stayed late, and never asked for anything. Most of the employees at CloudReach, a billion-dollar tech firm with offices in 10 countries, didn't know Ray's name. They knew the startup's founders, the VP of product, the girl from HR who wore loud heels. But Ray? He was just the janitor. The guy who buffed the floors, replaced the bathroom soap, emptied the bins. The guy who gave them a quiet nod as they walked past on their phones. He'd worked there for 8 years. Never missed a day. Never caused a problem. Never said no. Ray lived alone. A small, one-bedroom unit near Mountain View. Rent-controlled. Quiet. He took the bus to work every morning before sunrise, brought his own coffee in a thermos, ate lunch at the same bench outside the parking garage, turkey sandwich, apple, sometimes a boiled egg. He'd been offered full retirement twice, turned it down both times. Why? The HR rep asked the last time. Ray smiled. Work keeps me upright. His routine was clockwork. At 5 a.m., he unlocked the side entrance for deliveries. By 6, he'd finished the restrooms on floors 1 through 3. By 8, he made sure the lobby looked like no one had ever walked through it. At 8:30, the flood of employees arrived. Laptops in one hand, oat milk lattes in the other. Most never noticed Ray slipping quietly into the service elevator, heading up to mop stairwells or restock paper towels. But a few did. Jillian from HR always said, "Good morning, Ray." Nina, a new intern, once brought him a muffin just because, and Diego from IT always bumped fists with him in the hallway like they were on the same team. Ray appreciated them more than they'd ever know. He didn't need much, just decency. And most days that was enough. Until Travis Langford showed up, 30 years old, VP of Marketing, transferred from New York. Drove a Tesla, wore high-end sneakers, talked like every sentence should be quoted on LinkedIn. He arrived like a lightning bolt. New strategies, new slogans, new energy, and new problems. Because from the moment Travis saw Ray, he saw someone who didn't fit the brand. The first time it happened, Ray was restocking the coffee pods in the level 5 break room. Travis walked in mid-call, saw Ray kneeling near the cabinet and paused. "Can we maybe not do that while I'm on a client call?" he said, waving vaguely. Ray nodded. "Sure thing." He left the room. Quietly. No fuss. But something in Travis's tone, it stuck with him. Next week, it happened again. Ray was buffing the lobby floor after hours. Travis walked out of the elevator with a date, some model-type girl, laughing into her phone. "Really?" Travis muttered. "A janitor at 9 p.m.? Ray didn't respond, just kept moving the buffer. But he heard it. The third time, it wasn't just a mutter. It was a meeting. Travis had scheduled a brand experience alignment meeting with HR and the facilities team. Ray sat in the back as usual. Travis clicked through slides, talking about visual appeal, cultural presence, and public-facing aesthetics. And then he said it. We should be thinking about every detail. First impressions start in the lobby. If the first person someone sees is, no offense, but an elderly janitor, what message does that send? The room went silent. Jillian from HR shifted in her chair. Travis, she said gently, Ray's part of the team. He's been with us longer than most of us. Travis smiled, but it was sharp. I'm just saying, let's be real about optics. Ray said nothing. He sat there, quiet, same posture, same expression. But inside, something moved. Not anger. Not yet. Just a quiet ache. A memory he hadn't visited in years. Later that day, he went back to work. He fixed a leaky faucet on 12, refilled paper towels on 9, took the trash out on 3, and when he sat down for lunch, he pulled out an old photo from his wallet. It was wrinkled, folded into fourths. A woman, smiling, holding a mug with the words, "It's still a good day," written in faded Sharpie. Her name was Lena, his wife. Gone now. 6 years. Cancer took her fast, and Ray had walked away from everything to take care of her. Everything. But he didn't regret a thing. That night, as he buffed the lobby one last time before clocking out, he looked at his reflection in the glass wall. He didn't see an old janitor. He saw a man who'd lived, lost, loved, and kept going. But Travis? He wasn't done. Thursday, week 2 of Travis Langford's Culture Reset. Ray arrived at 4:47 a.m. Early, like always. The air smelled like eucalyptus from the building's new brand diffusers, another one of Travis's additions. It was supposed to make the lobby feel clean, modern, intentional. Ray thought it smelled like a hotel gym. He clocked in, grabbed his cleaning cart, and started his loop. Lobby, conference halls, second-floor restrooms. Everything looked the same, but something felt off. 9:10 a.m. Ray was in the elevator with his mop bucket, headed to the 12th floor, when a voice called out just before the doors closed. "Hold that." Ray pressed the door open button. Travis stepped in, holding an ice-cold brew in one hand and tapping furiously on his phone with the other. He didn't look up, didn't say thanks, didn't acknowledge Ray's presence at all. They rode in silence. Ding. Floor 5. Doors opened. Someone else stepped in. Travis looked up, saw them, then finally said, "Oh, hey, this is Ray. He's like our resident floor philosopher/mop ninja." He laughed. The woman forced a smile. Ray just nodded. The doors closed again. Later that day, Ray passed Jillian from HR in the hallway. She looked uneasy. "Hey, Ray, do you have a sec?" she asked. He followed her to a quiet corner office. She closed the door gently. I don't want to alarm you," she said slowly, "but we've gotten 2 complaints about you in the past 3 days." Ray frowned. "From who?" She shifted uncomfortably. "They're anonymous, but they mentioned you leaving cleaning supplies unattended and making comments to a female employee." Ray blinked. "I didn't." "I know. I told them that. But once it's on record, we're required to investigate, even if it's clearly," she hesitated, "baseless." Ray nodded slowly. "I get it." She looked him in the eye. "Ray, you've worked here longer than almost anyone. I trust you. But Travis is persuasive. And loud. If he's decided to make you a target." She trailed off. Ray gave a sad smile. "I've seen men like him before." By Monday, there were 3 more anonymous complaints. One said Ray was in the way during a fire drill. Another said he gave off a strange vibe. One claimed he moved too slowly and disrupted flow. All vague, all impossible to verify. But together, enough to start paperwork. Enough to begin performance review discussions. Ray kept working. He cleaned the bathrooms like he was preparing for a visit from royalty. He emptied the trash cans as if each one held something delicate. He buffed the lobby floors until you could see your future in them. But more and more, the stairs started. Whispers when he walked into the break room. A tech bro chuckling to a friend. Yo, did you hear the janitor's getting HR checked? Dude's probably creeping on the interns. Another one later. I swear he moves like he's buffering in real life. It wasn't just gossip. One afternoon, Travis walked into the lobby mid-cleaning. Ray was wiping fingerprints off the glass walls. Travis stopped and loudly said, You know, Ray, I read a study that said people over 65 are 40% more likely to cause workplace accidents. Just something to think about. Ray paused, looked him in the eye, said nothing, just kept wiping. That night, Ray sat at home. The apartment was dark, quiet, clean. Same worn-out recliner. Same old radio playing low jazz. He reached into his wallet and pulled out an old photograph. Him, Lena, a small house behind them, a company banner waving in the background, Sierra Sync Technologies. He traced the letters with his thumb. 15 years ago, that banner flew above a booming startup he helped build from the ground up. Back then, he was Ray Carter, co-founder. Today, just Ray, the janitor. He folded the photo back into his wallet and exhaled. But somewhere else in the building, someone else had noticed what was happening. Nina, the intern from UX design, was watching. She'd always said hi to Ray, always asked how his day was going. And lately, she'd seen how the vibe changed around him. That morning, she'd overheard a few execs joking about Old Man Mop. She didn't like it. And Nina was nosy, in the best way. That night, while working late on floor 11, she walked past a conference room and saw Travis inside. Alone. On speakerphone. He was laughing. Look, man, I'm just saying we clean house. New blood, clean look. Once we phase the guy out, we can redesign the whole damn lobby. Nina stopped. Didn't move. Yeah, HR's on board. Got the write-ups already stacking. Dude's done by end of month. She walked away before he could see her. But she'd heard enough. The next morning, Nina made a call to someone she knew from her college alumni network, a guy who used to write for TechLine, a well-known Silicon Valley newsletter. She told him she needed help verifying something. Off the record, she said, just a hunch. He agreed. Ray didn't know any of this yet. He just showed up, like he always did, even when his locker was moved without warning. Even when his name was left off the holiday shift schedule. Even when someone accidentally threw out his lunch. He kept going. Because for him, quitting had never been an option. That Friday, HR called Ray into another meeting. It was supposed to be routine. But this time, there was a new folder on the desk. Travis sat in, smirking. The folder had a termination proposal inside. Jillian looked heartbroken. I'm sorry, she whispered. Ray sat still, didn't raise his voice, didn't beg, just looked at the paper, and quietly said, You think this erases me? Travis laughed. You erased yourself, man. Ray stood, nodded, and walked out of the room. But what Travis didn't know, Nina's friend from TechLine had found something big, something from a company filing in 2004, a list of Sierra Sync's original co-founders. Right there in print, Raymond L. Carter. Saturday, 7:14 a.m. Ray's apartment was still, not quiet, still, like a photograph nobody had touched in years. A kettle steamed quietly in the background as he stood at the window, holding a chipped mug with the word, Still Breathing, printed on the side. Outside, kids were dragging scooters across sidewalks, early joggers passed with wireless earbuds, and life, as always, kept moving. Ray sipped slowly. He hadn't checked his phone, hadn't turned on the TV. He didn't need to. He already felt the storm brewing. Back at Cloudreach, the office was buzzing. The article had landed. Round Pushpin TechLine Weekly feature story. From startup genius to janitor, the secret life of Raymond Carter. A 4-page expose on Ray's past. Sierra Sync Technologies. His original patents. His talks on equity in tech. And, finally, his disappearance from the industry after his wife's diagnosis. Photos were included. Ray, in a collared shirt, standing beside two industry giants, both now CEOs of major firms. Quote, from a 2004 panel. Sometimes the people who make the biggest difference are the first to leave quietly. The piece ended with this line. He came back to work, but not for money, for purpose. And no one noticed him until now. Mobile phone with arrow Slack channels exploded. Wait, our Ray? How did we miss this? That man buffed the hallway outside my office for years. Travis is done, skull. Even the internal company subreddit lit up. Rant, y'all, let a co-founder scrub our trash bins while this company praised VPs who can't write an email? SMH. Hashtag respect Ray. Hashtag we walk past Ray. Nina, the intern who started it all, sat at her desk stunned. Not because of the virality, but because of the comments. Hundreds of people online, strangers, talking about how they knew a Ray in their lives. A bus driver, a teacher, a maintenance man. People with deep stories hidden beneath uniforms. I never said hi to him, one commenter wrote. I wish I had. At 8 a.m. sharp, Ray's name trended on LinkedIn. By 9:12, the CEO of Sierra Sync, his old startup, had released a short post. None of us would be here without Ray Carter. He built the bones of Sierra Sync. We failed him when we let him disappear quietly. Never again. That post got over 200,000 likes. Meanwhile, upstairs in the Cloudreach executive suite, Travis Langford was pacing. Hair disheveled, tie undone, one AirPod still in. His phone buzzed every 20 seconds. Telephone receiver PR. Telephone receiver legal. Telephone receiver a VC partner. His assistant cracked the door. There's press calling about the Ray situation. It's not a situation, it's a fluke. Travis snapped. He mopped the floors. You think Forbes is going to write a follow-up about a janitor? Actually, she muttered. Forbes just posted the story. 9:30 a.m. Ray was still home. He finally opened his email. 1,432 unread. He clicked the first one. Subject. Ray, you spoke at my college in 2002. You probably don't remember me, but you told me not to chase titles. I became a teacher because of that day. You changed my life. Thank you. He clicked the next. Subject. You're the reason I built my first startup. I'm so sorry no one saw you, but I'm glad the world sees you now. Ray closed the laptop and just sat. Then he smiled. Not a big smile, just full, like something heavy had finally shifted inside him. At Cloudreach, Travis called an emergency brand optics meeting. He brought in HR, PR, and 2 legal consultants. His tone was firm, performative, slick. We need to control the narrative. We didn't fire Ray. We encouraged retirement. The article spun it like we neglected him. We need to release a response. Jillian from HR cut him off. Travis, stop. We all know what happened. We watched you belittle that man in meetings. We watched you joke about pushing him out. Travis clenched his jaw. So, you're siding with the internet mob? No, Jillian said. I'm siding with decency. And she stood up, walked out. Half the room followed. That afternoon, a spontaneous email thread circulated through the company. Employees shared anonymous stories. How Ray had once fixed a jammed copy machine during an all-hands meeting. How he comforted a junior designer crying in the stairwell. How he once stayed late to help a single mom find her lost car key in the parking garage. By the end of the thread, someone had renamed it the Ray Carter Archive. On the other side of the city, Ray's phone rang. He answered on the 5th ring. A soft voice spoke. Mr. Carter? This is Ana Morales from the Foundation for Tech Legacy. We'd like to honor you at this year's Impact Gala. I'm not a fan of galas, Ray said gently. She laughed. That's what makes you perfect. The following day, Cloudreach held a company-wide town hall. But Ray didn't show up. Not out of bitterness. He just didn't want applause. He spent that day repainting a local community center wall that had been graffitied the week before. Quiet, calm, useful. But Travis was unraveling. He tried one last spin. He crafted a LinkedIn post. Ray Carter's story is a reminder that we must do better. I personally regret not knowing more about him. It got ratioed in under 30 minutes. One reply stood out. You didn't know. You just didn't care. That night, Travis walked into his apartment, opened his fridge, stood there in the white light for a full minute, and realized he had everything Ray didn't. The money, the condo, the title, but none of the legacy. Meanwhile, Ray sat on his porch with a radio, listening to a slow blues track Lena used to love. He sipped warm tea, and when a neighbor passed and said, "Mr. Carter, I read about you," Ray just smiled and said, "I'm still the same guy, just not invisible anymore." Monday morning, the story of Ray Carter was no longer trending. It was now everywhere. Television, CNN Business, rolled-up newspaper Wall Street Journal, studio microphone podcasts, Reddit threads, YouTube shorts. Even the CEO of Cloud Reach posted, "Legacy isn't about titles. It's about quiet impact. We failed Ray Carter, but we'll never forget him." But not everyone saw it that way, especially not Travis Langford. In a glass-walled office with no blinds, Travis sat in silence. The framed award on his wall, Top 40 Under 40 Innovators, looked back at him like a joke. He'd spent the weekend trying to get ahead of it. Memo he had drafted apologies, brainstormed rebranding strategies, briefcase even contacted a crisis PR firm. They ghosted him. Now he was out of cards until he found one final play, a strategic character assassination. That afternoon, Travis called an old connection, a podcaster who specialized in business exposés. He pitched a corrective interview. "You only know the soft side of the Ray Carter story," he said, "but I've done some digging into his past, things he conveniently left out." The host, curious, agreed. "Off the record, what kind of stuff?" Travis leaned in. "Financial records, a lawsuit, someone he walked away from. Might even be family." The next morning, the interview dropped. Title, Red Square, The Other Side of Ray Carter. What's the story he didn't tell? Travis didn't accuse directly, he implied. He used phrases like, "There are things we should question." You have to wonder why someone would leave millions behind. Silence isn't always noble, sometimes it's strategic. And then he dropped the hammer. "Let's just say, there's someone out there who should have been part of Ray's story and wasn't. No name, no facts, just enough poison to make people blink." And for a moment, it worked. Reddit threads questioned, did Ray have a shady exit? Why did he disappear completely for a decade? Where was his family in all this? The same voices who once defended him were now unsure. Back at Ray's apartment, the phone rang nonstop. People calling for a statement, clarification, retaliation. Ray answered none of them. Instead, he sat quietly, holding a box in his lap. A box he hadn't opened in 10 years. Inside, old newspaper clippings, a letter from Lena, and one sealed envelope with no name on it. He stared at it, then closed the box. Wednesday, 3:42 p.m. A black BMW pulled up to Cloud Reach's visitor entrance. Out stepped a woman, mid-40s, confident posture, eyes sharp like steel. She wore no makeup, carried a worn satchel. Signed in at the front desk. Name, Dr. Layla Carter. The receptionist's eyes widened. She called upstairs. 5 minutes later, security escorted her into the main boardroom, where the executive team had gathered for a quarterly debrief. Travis was at the head of the table. When she walked in, his face dropped. She dropped her bag on the table and said calmly, "Hi, my name is Layla. I'm Ray Carter's daughter." Silence. Travis blinked. Ray never mentioned. He wouldn't. He's not the kind of man who waves pain around like a flag. She pulled out documents. "I'm a trauma surgeon. My education was paid for entirely by the sale of Ray's shares in Sierra Sink, funds he never once touched for himself. He didn't disappear. He stepped out of the spotlight to take care of my mother. And me." Another document. A notarized letter. "And here's the record of a lawsuit. Yes, he fought for my mother's right to receive her last round of treatment after an insurance company tried to deny it. He lost. He still paid for it anyway." Then she looked directly at Travis. "And if you think using my mother's death to frame him makes you clever, it doesn't. It makes you small." The room was frozen. Even the CEO sat in stunned silence. Then Layla reached into her bag again. She pulled out something soft, fabric, faded, an old janitor's patch that read, "Carter." He kept this, not out of shame, out of pride, because he believed that no job, no matter how quiet, was beneath dignity. But what you did, what you tried to take from him, that was beneath you. Then she stood, gathered her things, and walked out. The fallout was immediate. Round Pushpin, the video of her speech, leaked within an hour. Round Pushpin, the podcast host who had interviewed Travis, posted an apology. Round Pushpin, Travis's LinkedIn was flooded with angry comments. Round Pushpin #Ray was right trended globally. The board held an emergency vote. Unanimous. Travis Langford was fired. Effective immediately. No press release. No golden parachute. Just a one-line internal memo. Mr. Langford is no longer with the company. The next morning, Ray finally spoke. He didn't call a press conference. He posted a photo, just a grainy image of a janitor cart. Captioned, "Some people fight for power. Some fight for peace. I'm just grateful I lived long enough to see both." RC. 2 weeks later, Ray was invited to deliver a keynote at the Tech Legacy Gala. He wore a simple black suit, walked on stage slowly, spoke with no slides, no teleprompter. "I spent my life building things. Some were made of code, some were made of memories, but the thing I'm most proud of is that even when the world stopped seeing me, I never stopped showing up." The room gave him a 5-minute standing ovation. He cried, quietly, not because he needed the recognition, but because Lena would have been proud. 1 month later, the walls of Ray's apartment were still bare, not because he didn't have photos, but because he didn't need them to remember. Everything important lived in his mind. Lena's laugh, the smell of her hair when she leaned in to hug him after his shifts, the soft hum she'd give when she knew he was right but wouldn't admit it. Her voice still lived in the quiet corners of his mornings. After the gala, Ray had received offers from everywhere. Briefcase, a spot on the board of Sierra Sync. Graduation cap, an honorary doctorate from Stanford. Studio microphone, guest invites to tech conferences, podcasts, think tanks. He declined 90% of them, except one. Every Thursday now, Ray taught a free class at a local community center. Tech in purpose. But it wasn't just about code. It was about ethics, service, humility, legacy. He'd sit with young developers, teenagers, even ex-cons trying to start over. He taught them Python and patience, how to debug their apps and their tempers. He never preached, just shared. And they listened, because he was the realest man in every room. At CloudReach, things had shifted. The company launched a new initiative, the Carter Standard. A culture reformation, not just DI programs or slogans, but actual policy changes. Everyone was required to spend 1 week a year shadowing non-managerial staff. Interns now had mentorship meetings with cleaning crew, security, and operations. The lobby now had a plaque, just a small one, stainless steel. It read, "This floor shines because of a man who never stopped showing up. Raymond Carter, 1951, and underneath it, humility is power. Never forget the quiet ones." One morning, Nina visited Ray's class. She brought cupcakes and a photo, framed. It was her and Ray sitting on the porch the day after the scandal ended. She'd titled it, "The Day the Giant Finally Sat Down." Ray laughed. "That's too dramatic." She shrugged. "Yeah, well, so was your silence." He smiled. "Fair." Travis Langford had moved to Texas, tried to launch a consulting firm, posted 3 videos on YouTube titled, "Leadership Under Fire." When you're the villain, cancel culture versus growth. Each one got fewer than 500 views. No one wanted advice from a man who kicked down the quiet to elevate his own voice. Eventually, he stopped toasting and disappeared into the white noise of men who couldn't handle losing their spotlight. Ray didn't gloat, didn't even mention Travis. Not once. Because for Ray, justice isn't a headline. It's living in peace when the noise fades. On a quiet Sunday, Ray got a visitor. A man in his 40s. Jeans, baseball cap, nervous eyes. Ray opened the door slowly. The man said, "Mr. Carter, I know this is weird, but my dad worked the night shift with you back in '06. Said you once gave him your jacket on a rainy walk home when his car broke down." Ray smiled. "I remember." The man nodded. "Well, I just wanted you to know, my dad passed last year, but he always told me, if I ever forget who I want to be, think about Carter." Ray's throat tightened. He didn't say much, just stepped outside, put a hand on the guy's shoulder and said, "Then he raised you, right?" That night, Ray walked the neighborhood. Cool air. Faint smell of barbecue 2 blocks down. Sprinklers ticking quietly across lawns. He stopped by a little lot where teenagers hung out and talked about nothing. They waved. He waved back. One kid shouted, "Yo, Mr. Ray, you on TikTok again?" Ray chuckled. "Don't believe everything you see, son." He came home, poured a cup of tea, and sat by the window. Miles Davis played low in the background. Lena's photo sat on the table beside him. He picked it up, brushed the dust from the corner. "I'm good, baby. Not famous. Not rich. Just seen. And finally at peace." He leaned back, sipped his tea, and watched the night roll in. Sparkle's final words, narrator style for YouTube. Some people spend their whole lives chasing recognition. Others give everything and ask for nothing. Ray Carter was never invisible. We were just too busy looking the other way. But now, we see him. Speech balloon, drop a comment if someone like Ray ever crossed your path and you wish you told him thank you. Thumbs up like this video if you believe kindness should always be remembered. Bell subscribe for more stories about justice, humility, and the people we almost missed.